did not have before and practiced in a more honorable way. St. Augustine, referring to the conference at Nicaea, 325 AD, said these people are trying to give us a religion we had 3,000 years ago. So there's nothing about Christianity, Hebrewism, or Islam that is alien to us in our culture. And yet I am boldly against all three, because they have been reinterpreted and reconceptualized and used as instruments of your oppression. What is the major thing in our life we must reconstruct in order to be a whole people again? We must reconstruct and rebuild and reconsider a container called the state, essential to holding any people together. And when you are living in a container fashioned by, designed by other people, you take on their habits, you wear their clothes, you take on their food taste, you take on their thoughts, you take on their degenerate habits. Our mission in the world, which is a pan-African and a nationalistic mission, is to bring African people back to that cross in the road where they made the wrong decision and became fascinated by other people's toys, other people's religion, other people's clothes, and sometimes other people's women. A North African head of state, supposedly Gaddafi, who is a religious zealot and an Islamic fascist, was sending some of his young men to Europe to study. And he was supposed to have said to them, I am sending you to Europe to gain technical training and to come back and be better Arabs, better Muslims, better Libyans, and build this nation for Libya and for no one else. And remember, you cannot achieve any of this between the legs of a European woman. Now that's crude, borders on the vulgar. But you know one thing? It's right. We have to tell our young men and our young women, if we're going to build the African nation, if we're going to get back our customs and our culture, our sense of family, our sense of respect, we're going to have to turn inward, look at ourselves again, and draw on the best virtues of our own creation. In the last 3 or 4 years, most of my study has been around religion and slavery. Because religion and slavery work so well together, it is frightening to think of either one of them. Because too many times, religion creates a rationale for slavery. And sometimes, they're both the same. Now, I'm not talking about the lack of goodness, the lack of virtue, the lack of family planning. I'm not talking about any of this. And I'm not against any of this. But we're going to talk about reconstruction. If we're going to reconstruct, then we have to find out what did we lose in our relationship with other people, and what did we gain that we need to discard because we never should have taken them on in the first place. We had a family system that, if you understand, the pyramids were built without an industrial complex. If you could build a pyramid without an industrial complex, you can't build it without massive labor. Then how did that massive labor come together? Through the spirituality of that day and through commitment and organization. And we're going to come from this area of confusion and degeneracy that we are in right now. We're going to have to look back and find out, how did we live before foreigners, fakers, and fools invaded our country and gave us a way of life alien to our culture, alien to our customs, alien to our family structure. We have to look back and find out what made Egypt great. Inasmuch as this is a country in Africa, you know, though it's not the senior country in Africa, the senior country in Africa is not Egypt, but Ethiopia. Because Ethiopia is the mother of Egypt. What made it great? Collective discipline and high morality. What's our greatest danger right now? Disunity, and low morality. The lack of a loyalty system. There are certain things we did not do because the laws of morality that did not have to be enforced by the police did not let us do this. At this time, we built a society that had no word for jail because no one had ever gone to one. Had no social agency because you did not need any social agency. What are you going to do with a relief agency when relief is taken care of within the family structure? You need no orphanage because if a child needed a home, any door will do. And the home of the old people was the same home they've been in all along. You needed an extra room built on the house. 6 or 7 men can get together and build a room. Not going to cost you anything. They expect you to put on a nice dish. After finish, put a nice bottle on the table. At the end of that, everything was barter. You do for me, I do for you. You fix my sandals, I'll make your corn. Exchange. What created greed and grabbing and cheating? Hard currency. I don't need you to fix my sandals. I got money. I can go and buy some. I don't have to till my corn. Somebody else can do that. Now the strong is beginning to take advantage of the weak. And we begin to lose that cultural cohesion. This started in the 1700s BC when a bunch of wandering people, escaping families, came into Africa. Africa with its customary kindness and hospitality to strangers, let them in. What did these strangers do? Africa gave them land, gave them jobs, showed them women, gave them women. You can't be a better guest than that, better host than that. When Africa was invaded, 1675 BC, the same people, instead of joining the Africans who had befriended them, joined the invaders and became great wheeler dealers in the courts of the invaders, and there produced the world's first wheeler dealer politician called Joseph the Provider. Why could he provide? He had the ear of the king, the foreign king. And so anytime anyone tells you that they were in a house of bondage in Egypt, ask them what was the period. The period they name is the period of Egyptian occupation from Western Asia. And if they say that you enslaved my people, you said that you are a liar because I was not in charge when your people were enslaved. And I seriously question whether they were enslaved at all. And when they were put out of Africa, this is the real origin of the Exodus. When they were put out of Africa, they were put out because the Africans said that now that I've broken the back of the invaders of my country, and you come as a guest and collaborated with the invaders, it's time for you to go. Because you will no longer obey African law or respect Africa. Now they allegedly left, led by an African born at Goshen, in present-day Egypt, called Moses, who allegedly gave them some laws brought down from the mountains. If he gave them any laws brought down from the mountains, then he had to take the laws up there with them, because all of those laws were intact 300 years before Moses was born. He had read texts written in Africa, and had copied these laws, 42 confessions. And the European European interpretation of changes the language around. These were omissions of purity after years of study at the great lodge at Luxor. The Africans call it Warat. The Greeks call it Thebes. And you stood before your school teacher, your master, and said, I have not been guilty of murder. I have not been guilty of violating my neighbor's wife. Western man gets a hold of 10 of them, allegedly chosen by Moses, changed the language around to thou shalt not. There are no thou shalt nots in African spirituality. There's pledges of what you will do, not what you won't do. In the name of this deity, I pledge to do thus and so. You studied the Akan religion. You studied it well. Study the oath of Comitatus. Study other African religions. No, thou shalt not. I will do this in the name of the religion. The oath of Comitatus is the capital oath among the Akan. And anything you pledge to do in the name of that oath, you must do it or destroy yourself. If you remember your Ghanaian history, Osira Tutu was killed at the Pra River. And they created an oath of revenge, the highest oath in the Akan pantheon. It's the oath of Comitatus. When Nkrumah was in power, some people were angry with him. The rumor was that someone had said the oath against him. He stayed at Black Staff House and didn't come out for 2 months. He knew he'd better respect that African culture until this is investigated. That's serious. They won't just half kill you if they make that pledge. They won't stop until they kill you. If they fail, they kill themselves. So the oath, the pledge of what you will do, takes place of that thou shalt not. What I'm saying is, if we want to apply this to today in reconstructing our lives, why can't we say, I will not wear a shoe that a black man did make? We're creating a shoe industry right there. I will wear no clothes black people didn't create. We're creating a textile industry right there, and a tailoring industry. And suppose, starting with Farrakhan, a millionaire figure, but we won't go too deep into that. I will not ride in a limousine until my people make a limousine. Suppose he had that kind of commitment. Do you know all the brothers with all the mechanical training will put their minds together? I bet by the end of the year we'll be producing cars. Now let's look at Gandhi. Martin Luther King did not understand. Gandhi was an East Indian faker, a B actor, a liar, but a great Indian nationalist. He didn't fight for China. He fought for India alone. He ain't got no time for nobody but India. He betrayed the Africans in South Africa. The Indians made an agreement with South Africa that if we don't have to carry the past, we'll keep quiet as the Africans carry the past. They were quiet. That's straight throughout. Came time to vote for Nelson Mandela, they voted for the whites. And so did the colors. No loyalty. Now back to Gandhi again. Gandhi went home, British tweed, he's a brown-skinned Englishman. In the dead summertime, bowler hat. He got ridiculed. Hell, you an Indian? You an East Indian? He served in the British Army as a sergeant. Finally, he took off all those Western clothes, shoes, got himself some sandals, and went back to the spinning wheel and started making his own clothes and taught others to do the same thing. He left India, one of the greatest textile industries in the world. I said once at Bank Street School, in some memorial services to Martin Luther King, who I loved and respected but disagreed with, suppose Martin Luther King would stand in public and take off all of his clothes except his underwear. Said, I will wear no clothes my people do not make. If you don't clothe me, I'll go naked in the street. You know nobody wants to see the pastor going running around naked. You be making some clothes for the pastor right away. But you be starting an industry. We could, all of these kids killing each other over crack could be executives in industries that we create. I'm still talking about a container called a state and how far we are away from it and why we are so alien away from home in someone else's container that gives us a temperament alien to our original temperament. I'm talking about everything, including the incident on 125th Street today. All of this is due to the fact that sometimes we can't even control our own property. This was black-owned property. But an outsider was controlling the lease on one of the stores. They could have broken that lease and said, look, man, no, this register being 20 years so, and the brother did no harm, he's paying his rent on time. No, but white determined, kept making decisions. Led to altercation, led to tragedy. We are so kind. We are unkind to ourselves. We're so democratic. We're undemocratic toward ourselves. And what am I talking about? Reconstruct. To get back, even in this country, what we've lost. Right now, our position is far behind the position we were in before the Civil Rights Movement. You can change your position without changing your condition. Relative to the rest of the United States, economically, educationally, we are further behind now than we were before the Civil Rights Movement. We use the wrong semantics. We asked for the wrong thing, and while we were asking for it, moving through an NACP syndrome, we're not asking any questions. The emphasis should have never been on integration. It should have been on justice and desegregation. I have the right not to go to that school. With justice, I have a right to go, and I have a right not to go. I have a right not to be bussed into somebody else's neighborhood where they hate my guts. But we sent our children right into the front line of this battle, unprepared. Some of them got psychologically cut to pieces. Mainly because we had forgotten certain things in our own life. Don't send them any place where you can't pull them back and protect them. Then no matter where you send them, when they come home at the end of the day, ask what happened, give them strength to do better the next day. That child deserves the best of your attention, because that is your tomorrow if you're going to have any tomorrow. He is a future ancestor. He is a future inheritor of your responsibility. We began to discard some of the customs in our community. Customs of culture, customs of respect. You can measure the civilization of the order of a people by how well they take care of the very young, the very old, and the sick and the needy. When they neglect people in that area, they lack what you call civilization, because to be civilized is supposed to be civil. I remember an incident when my father grabbed me by the ears and by the neck, drug me home, and gave me one of the worst beatings he ever gave me. And through the whole thing, I'm asking, what's this for? What did I do? And finally he told me, you walked by that old lady and didn't say excuse me, and did not say good morning, and show disrespect. Disrespect in this family is not a negotiable item. We do not punish you the second time. You get punished the first time. I never walked by an old lady, an old man again without showing proper respect. Now, what do? We push them off the sidewalk. We neglect them. We let them die in nursing homes. People mistreat them. We let them own farms in the South, and they lose their farms. Hypocritical crackers Because we don't send enough money to pay the tax. And all we have to do is just send enough money to pay the tax. They don't owe any money on the farm. But they do have to pay tax every year. If you postpone drinking 3 bottles of scotch, you drink more than that in a year, you have enough money for the tax. We've lost land. They don't make no more land. When it's gone, it's gone. And the price goes up and you don't get it back. I'm still talking about reconstruct what slavery and colonialism took away. Everyone who came to Africa, every foreigner, every invader declared war on the African family and its way of life. Many of the brothers taken with Islam let the Arabs off the hook. But the Arabs not only declared war on our family, he declared war on his own women, the bastards. Now think about it. There's not a single woman in state power in a single Arab nation, any place on the face of the earth. If I'm wrong, correct me. Now in Nigeria, where you had African Islam, Amina not only became head of state, but head of her army and led them in battle. And the walls she built to protect the state of Zara in Nigeria are still there. A thing you have to learn, but most religious people are ignorant of the religion they belong to anyway, is that Islam was spread into West Africa by Islamized blacks who knew what not to destroy. And the one thing they left alone, which prevails throughout most of Africa, even today, is the matrilineal system. The lineage comes down through the female line, not the male line. The Arabs in East Africa destroyed the system and installed the patrilineal system. Now it comes down through your elder son. Go to the marketplace in East Africa. See how many women you see. Swahili, a trader's language, a mixture of seven languages, like white. Swahili is not even a language, it's a lingua franca, a mixture of language. If you want to see pure Swahili, you got to go to parts of the Congo, parts of inner Africa, where they speak a Swahili that's not even understood in the coast of East Africa. Go to West Africa, that's Muslim. In Senegal, there's more Muslims than Arabia. The women control the marketplace. The concession that the men have is rented from the women. The women have a society, the Sunday society, have their own courts. They can try their own husbands. You don't see no women beating of any consequence in this part of Africa. Yet the Arabs, the woman beater, she's quite a bit up in the East Africa. See what I mean? If you read Sheikh Issa Diop's work, The Culture Unity, of black Africa. He explains that the highest honor paid to the mother. And man go each morning and prostrate himself at his mother's door. Does not rise until she taps him on the shoulder and says, "Rise, precious fruit of my womb, accept my blessings for the day." He's not a man until she calls him a man. She created him. She can uncreate him. In Ethiopia, when there's capital punishment, if the mother won't participate in it, you can't kill her. She brought him in the world and will be taken out. You can't take him out without her approval. Now, can you see the respect we pay women before we came in touch with these foreigners, fakers, and fools? Now, can you understand that that wasn't, in spite of all the lies Alice Walker and others tell, there wasn't one single case of homosexuality in Africa or lesbianism in Africa before the coming of foreigners. The one thing the African man was clear about: who was the woman and who was the man. Alice Walker writes books that the African men are throwing women down on a dusty road and, performing circumcisions on them so they can't feel anything in the sexual act. If you talk about even the men on the moon, I might have believed part of it. When you talk about black men, please. The black man has so damn much sexual ego, he ain't going to destroy her ability to respond. Because if he say, "How am I doing, baby?" he wants an answer. But if you destroy her ability to feel anything, what kind of answer can she tell you except something about the estimation of your weight? The kind of circumcision of women she's talking about, and I'm not indulging it, came with the coming of the Arabs. Now the African had alteration of the clitoris, but nothing that kept her from bearing a child, and nothing that kept her from feeling pleasure. And these operations were performed on women by women. Today, not a single circumcision is performed on women except by other women. So how did she get the men in there when they're not even permitted to even watch the ceremony? Well, she was married to a white man. He did her wrong or didn't do her right well enough. She started hanging out with a black man, and he had an eye for an occasional extra curricular activity with other women. So she turned on all black men for that betrayal. When white women get dissatisfied with white men, in most cases, they go choose another white man. Black women get dissatisfied with black men sometimes and turn against all of them. And she'll take a white drip other than a white man. Now, you know O.J. could have done better. If all you want is white, any waitress would have done what you do. If that's all you want. But you can't make a great black nation that way. So you have to stop kidding yourself about it. If we're going to reconstruct, I don't mean we need to close other people out of our lives. I've known some decent interracial marriages, but I don't advocate it as a solution for anything or as a way of life. It's producing too many confused people who don't know who to love and who to hate. If we're going to reconstruct, then we got to find out what we had, what we need to build back. I wasn't too deep on this until I lived in several African countries and noticed ceremonies in New Orleans, Alabama, Georgia, where I grew up. I noticed the same ceremony in Africa. And yet, if you tell blacks in Alabama and New Orleans they're doing something African, some of them want to hit you. And yet, from memory, we picked up some of the African customs. No such thing as a wedding invitation, because if there's a wedding, everybody's invited. We had a big mom in one of the communities where I live. You know, if a woman is real bossy, we call them big mama, no matter how small they are. And we came there with the rice to throw. He said, I don't want no throwing of the rice around here. The depression has started. Save that rice and eat it. Wish him well and go in and have a piece of cake and go home. She was one of the wisest ladies in our community, although we call her Crazy Annie. Anytime there was a fuss around and she wanted it stopped, she would say, don't come to me with a whole lot of who shot John. John got his behind shot and going by his business. And when you look at, go in Africa, then among your own people, the beautiful wisdom that you don't hear anymore, the things from the elders that you don't hear anymore, they're now mutilated to spirituals where sometimes I don't feel like hearing them. There is a distinction between the blues and the spirituals, and there is a blend. Aretha Franklin can bring it off sometime on a good day, but most people cannot bring it off. Most of our classical singers started off as gospel singers because it came out of our culture. But with integration, a whole lot of people stopped eating cornbread. You have to go back into your culture in order to save yourself. I was in England during the so-called Million Man March, which I have dared to call a ceremonial waste of time and a Farrakhan game, but that's a subject for another lecture when I've got two little bodyguards to make sure no one blocks my run from the door. I was with the Caribbean community. There's more Caribbean in England than there were on the island. Because they realized something in England they did not realize on the island. They are not white, and they are not wanted by white. You can have all the illusions you want to, but they don't want you. You will come down to do the job with other English who had upward mobility due to the war. The war is over now. He wants those old jobs back because those old jobs pay pretty decently now. He wants you out of there because you are too attracted to his ladies who have a taste for chocolate. And too many of the men have a taste for milk. Symbolically speaking. I thought that that was the place I needed to be at the 50th anniversary of the Pan-African Congress of 1945. This is the Pan-African meeting that set the African independence explosion in motion. I'm saying that this meeting that did not get any television time, not one article in the newspaper, was the most significant meeting in the whole of the African world. And I'm saying the Million-Man March on Washington was a lot of jive. Who heard what happened to them? Who heard what happened to that money?
Only God knows.
Farrakhan knows. All those promises. Look, Farrakhan in that conference had the largest listening audience ever for a black person. It was broadcast in England, broadcast in Africa, broadcast throughout the United States. He spoke for over 2 hours. Martin Luther King said more in less than 20 minutes than he said in those 2 hours. He said a whole lot of things that were not factual. He can get away with you because you don't know that a lot of his figures were off. His figures were off about the slave trade. He's giving you a tour of Washington Monument. He's comparing Washington Monument with a lot of things that have nothing to do with Washington Monument at all. Now, if you want to know what the obelisk, the Washington Monument, those other tall, pointed buildings is, you want to know what the symbol of? Yeah. Years ago, Osiris' husband was killed. And they found every part of him except the penis. And she erected obelisks all over Egypt, even into Ethiopia, to remind his murderers of that part of his body that was not recovered, allegedly eaten by the catfish in the Nile. I know someone who won't eat catfish today. This stuff happened over 6,000 years ago. See, then, at Abyssinia Church, later, before that, Farrakhan opens his speech by saying that he thanks Allah for giving us Moses. 7 ministers in the audience. The period between Moses Prophet Muhammad, over 2,000 years. How can the one who came 2,000 years later give the other one who came earlier? It's a beautiful card game. Great performance. But the key to all of this, all of those talks, the largest audience ever to listen to a black person, the word Africa never crossed their lips.
Yes, sir.
And anytime you got that kind of audience and cannot bring Africa into focus, you are out of order.
Yes, sir.
You are denying your mother and your father. Now let's take this. Between Farrakhan, O.J. Simpson, and the general, you have the largest audience ever to listen to black people in human history. Over half of the world, not one mentioned the word Africa. Not one saw us in relationship to the continent that gave us birth. They're out of order. Now this talk was about reconstruction. You have to reconstruct in your mind your place of origin, how that place was taken away from you, how you will have to regain that place and preserve it for your children and their children waiting to be born. You will have to go back to that fork in the road. For we as a people went wrong. Nearly all religions in Africa was brought by conquerors, foreigners, bakers, and fools. They're all used to the benefit of the conqueror. Farrakhan made 3 appointments with me and didn't keep any of them. I told him and his lieutenant, if you're willing to march with me on the Arab embassies against the Arab slave trade and the wholesale murder of my people in the Sudan and Mauritania, and the fact that you got 500,000 African slaves in Arabia right now, if you want to march with me against the Arab embassy, I'll march with you to Washington, though I don't believe that there's a necessity to go to Washington at all. Because you're not going to achieve nothing that you can't achieve without marching. This thing of atonement, what am I going to atone for what I'm not guilty of? I've had 2 wives. I've spoiled both of them by taking care of them so damn good, they thought they didn't have to do a damn thing for me. Now what am I atoning for? For being a fool? But to assume that every black man got something to atone for is a lie.
Yes, sir.
Many black men work 3 jobs in order to keep their wife at home. And in the South, even more so, because they knew that white men took undue liberties with black women, so they didn't want them to serve as maids and cooks in their home. So they took the extra job and died early, just working themselves to death. Now he got something to atone for? Admittedly, there are some black men with something to atone for. And there's a hell of a lot of black women with something to atone for, too. Because many men did that and she showed him no mercy at the door. Not even a good greeting. I didn't say, oh. I said, son. There's a lot of single-parent families, and the single parent is a man. And the woman is still alive. So it's not, while the man may have done most of the deserting, the woman has to share some blame for some of it. Because sometimes her sharp tongue is driven more men away from home than poverty. Now, how do you end something that has no end? Today we're at the threshold of greatness with no understanding of greatness. We're the world's richest people, and we are terribly poor because we have not managed our richness. And to manage your spiritual richness, you have to manage your cultural richness. Yes. Every great movement must have a cultural force behind it. I didn't say religious force. I say cultural force. To get back your conception of spirituality that existed before the major religions of the world gave you the illusion that you just had to belong to one of them. We must take an example from the Nuba people of the Sudan that was about to be destroyed by the Arab slave trade. What did the Nuba people do? They went back into their culture. They sang their songs again. They turned to the deity called God in their old way again. They danced their own dances again. They ate and enjoyed the food of their own originality. They literally saved themselves from extinction. Why then could the people in Europe not save themselves from what they call the Holocaust? They had merged their culture with the culture of their enemies to the point where their culture and the culture of the enemy was one and the same. They were the most integrated Jews in the world. Now, if we are the most integrated blacks in the world, when they turn on us, who's going to turn us over to them except another blacks who know why we're hiding? We better look into our culture as a protection. Yes. And from the protection of culture, we must create a military protection based on self-reliance. Produce the food you eat. Produce the clothes you wear. If you live in a brick house, why not own a brick yard? Live in a wooden house, own part of the forest. You must sustain yourself. Now, all I've been talking about is a container called the state. The nation state is un-African. The African lived in a territorial state. In a territorial state, many states and many cultures living side by side. So what you got? cross-fertilization. One culture stimulates the other one, challenges the other one, paces the other one. Sometimes a great runner in practice hires another runner to run alongside him to pace him so he can check his pace. This is what other cultures will do for you. I'm not simply talking about fierce competition. I'm talking about prompting. And you probably would do the same thing for them. I'm talking about the kind of cooperation that existed between sharecroppers in Alabama and Georgia, when all of us gathered, got at each other's corn, got at that one's potatoes, and just all the crops were in. The man with only 2 children brought 2 hands to the job. The man with 6 brought 6. Everyone's all over. Nobody argued about who brought 6 and who brought 2. You brought what you had. We're collective people. We were practicing what someone would later call communism, that was functioning in Africa before there was a Europe and before there was a Karl Marx. We turned away from our culture at a historical fork in the road and lost the things that we needed for our own salvation. We have to go back to that fork in the road and read those signboards again. When we see a signboard that says Pan-African nationalism, the unity of all African people first, takes precedence over all other unities, loyalty and respect for our own people. When we see a signboard pointing in that direction, we'll be on our way of constructing a container called a state that will contain and nurture our soul, our aspirations, our hope in the basis of our tomorrow. Because at last, we will have found the road that will lead us back home. Thank you very much.